Do you want to open an art or craft studio business but wondering how the heck do I get started? Well, you're in luck because in this video, I'm chatting with my friend Christy Nelson, who is the founder of Makit Takit, a drop-in craft studio located in Lincoln, Nebraska. Christy's been running her craft studio business since 2016, and over the years, it has expanded to include not only craft classes and parties, but also an annual maker market, business mentoring and retreats for other creatives, as well as a grown-up craft camp called Makit Together. Let's hear from Christy about how she got started and some of the lessons that she learned the hard way. So you have been running a craft studio business for a number of years now. And I would love to first off kind of talk about like what that business looks like for somebody who may love making crafts, love teaching crafts, but is not sure like what the actual business entails. So you can kind of talk us through the craft studio business model and kind of how you got started with this.
There are a lot of different ways that you can run a craft studio. I'm going to talk about the way I do it and maybe give a few examples of some others that I know of. But my studio is basically run as a drop-in craft studio. We have all the tools and supplies for people to come in, so it's a service-based, but also product because they are coming in and making a product.
Oh yeah, so it sounds like you're making money in a couple of different ways, right? You're making money from people paying
Yes.
you for art classes and from selling the supplies for the classes.
They can come in and pick a project, and we have everything for them to make that project. So they pay me for basically that service and all of the things included. So it's just a way for people to come in, have a little fun, make something, and we can help them do that. We also, in my studio, we do classes, camps, birthday parties. There are a lot of different revenue streams that you kind of need to have for a business like this. We added retail after the pandemic, so that was something that we hadn't really been into before, but now that's a really big part of our revenue now. So that was a nice little pivot. Most craft studios have some component of either instruction, education, some sort of way to create. Some people do strictly come in and we're making this specific thing today. Some are a little more open-ended. Mine, we have a set projects. They change over time. Everybody knows that you're going to find some things to paint. You're going to find things to do with yarn. You're going to find button art. You're going to find, metal stamping, wood burning. So we have like our specific things that we do. So everybody knows that they're going to be able to find something to make.
How did you get started in this business and how long have you been doing this business? Can you talk us through that whole thing? If people are thinking about this as a potential career path, what should they expect from your experience?
Okay, so I started this business in 2016. I'm in my 8th year, going on 9. Basically, it was something that I had been thinking about for a very long time, and I had been close to opening something similar in 2010 with a business partner. My business partner ended up moving, and I wasn't in a position to do it on my own at that time. I had young children, and it was just not a great time for me to be opening a business. So in 2016, I had just turned 40, and I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I just need to do this. So I did. In the past, I had been a craft blogger. So I was kind of in that industry a little bit. I had been to the trade shows. I had been working with brands, doing some of those kind of collaborations and things with their products and supplies. And I just had access to all of these tools. Maybe it wasn't like my jam to do something, but I wanted people to be able to come in and experience a lot of different types of crafting or arting or whatever, however you want to say it. But I wanted them to be able to experience all those things so then they can decide, like, do I really want to get into metal stamping or did I just want to make one thing? Because I think a lot of us, especially I'm very neurospicy. So when you get to that stage where you're just collecting all these crafts, is that really sustainable? Do I really need $100 worth of whatever to make this one Pinterest project? So that was kind of like my impetus for starting the store. I was like, I want people to be able to come in. They don't have to buy a $20 pack of whatever. They can get one thing from us to make their project and be successful and be happy. And then if they want to invest in becoming a master metal stamper or whatever, then they can do that. But I wanted to give people like this entry into hobbies, entry into crafts, and trying to find out what they love. So that's what I did.
That's awesome. So, what are some of the lessons that you learned the hard way through starting this business, or maybe mistakes that you made? Or I also know that you do some mentoring for other people who are starting these types of businesses. So maybe you've seen other people make mistakes that you had sort of warned against.
Probably some of the biggest mistakes I made. Well, at the beginning, I think I should have started maybe a little smaller. I also made mistakes where this is somewhat embarrassing now because my business is based so much on children, but I didn't allow children. When I first opened, I was like 10 and up. And now my biggest customers, like the age range is like 8 to 12. They love my store. But the good thing with a craft studio is you can pivot. I wasn't locked into a lot of things. Like my store was such that I could change out projects. I could change out, I could bring in different instructors. So that was something that I learned early on, that you have to be really flexible and see what the market will bear. I realized really quickly that grown-ups don't typically invest in themselves, taking classes or general enjoyment, which I think is a mistake, and I'm trying to remedy. I realized that the adults were more likely to invest in their children. So I was losing out on a huge market by not opening up the age ranges. And at first I was just scared because I was like, I don't want little kids in here with scissors and whatever, all my tools, and just messing everything up. But it turns out that, the adults are just as bad about ruining tools and things than children. So anyway, that was one of my early mistakes early on, was just not opening myself up to more customers. Another thing was I probably got into a lease too soon.
So, when you're advising people who want to start one of these businesses, I know that you are very strategic, and like me, I love to think about like big picture business plans, stuff like that. So, kind of, what do you advise in that regard?
So I have what I call a business plan boot camp, and we talk about all of the strategy that needs to be involved with starting a business. The people who would like to start a business like this are usually very creative and might not have the best business sense. Like, you can learn business just like you can learn creativity. I just like to make sure that the people who want to do something like this understand that it is very much a business, and you're not just going to sit around and make things all day. If you're getting into this business for that, I don't recommend it. In the business plan boot camp, or just even strategy sessions that I hold with people who are interested in opening creative studios like this, I like to discuss the parts that aren't so fun. You need to do market research. Can your community even handle a business like this? Are there enough people who are interested? Do you have competition? I like to let people know that it is a business first and foremost, even though it's a really fun business to be in.
Well, and I know that you mentioned sort of wishing that you had started a little smaller, or maybe not jumping into a lease as soon. This is something that I years ago was advising a friend of mine who was opening up a brick and mortar store like that. And now they have it. But early on, I was like, can you find ways to test this? Doing little pop-ups at relevant local events and partnering with other local, organizations and people who will become your customers, and sort of building it up that way.
Yeah, so you want to kind of build that social proof, or make yourself be an expert in the community. A brick and mortar does provide that level of, supposed expertise to people. It kind of gives you some credibility that you might not have if you're just, like at a vendor fair and trying to get people to do stuff. There is that benefit from a brick and mortar, but I don't think the cost of the lease makes up for that benefit at first. Building up a customer base is always great, and getting some fans, letting people know that you're going to do this, that you do want to grow and you do want to be bigger. So I sometimes suggest to people that why don't they start a mobile party business? Like if you're going to have craft parties, why don't you take it to them first before them coming to you? If you're going to host some workshops, why don't you find a venue and host a few workshops to see if it's even something that you like to do? Figure out how you're going to accept your payments. Figure out how you're going to deal with buying your supplies before you kind of jump in and do this whole hog whatever, test the waters and make sure it's something that you really want to do, because once you sign that lease, you are in. It's really hard to get out of that, and you want to make sure that you are doing something that you love, knowing that there's a lot more involved than just helping people make things.
Maybe we could dive in a little bit more to some of the like general rough financials or like costs that people need to be considering when they're putting together these business plans for this type of business.
The main costs for me right now are payroll and rent. And I know when you're first starting, you might not be considering payroll because you'll do a lot of the stuff on your own. But if you want to get to any place where you have any time for yourself or you want to grow your business, that's something that you need to consider. And so when I'm doing my business plans with other people, I always tell them include some people, because if you can't run your business, you need to pay someone to do it. If something happens to you, if you need, anything. So I always include that in, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't need to pay myself right away or whatever. Pay yourself, and pay, like, plan on paying at least 1 to 2 other people and include that in your plan. Try and figure out how many revenue streams you need to be able to do that. Payroll costs, that's going to vary depending on where you live. It's probably like a third of your total operating costs. Same thing with rent, is going to be about a third of your operating costs. And then the rest, you've got inventory, you have all the extra things that you have to pay for. Like you have to pay your credit card processing fees, you have to pay your website, you have to pay any professional organizations that you're in. There's a lot. I'll just put it this way. When I started my business, I had, I think, $30,000 upfront, which is very low, actually, I think, for most people to start a business. But that's what I had right then. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use this to start whatever. And then month by month, I would invest whatever from our income to add to that. So I would say when all was said and done, I was probably, maybe $100,000 in that first year getting established, of just like constant investment into my business, to the point where now it sustains itself and I don't have to do that constant investment anymore. So that's nice. But yeah, you do need like a little chunk of change to make sure that you can get things going. You also need to take into account that those first few months are slow. They're slow. And you're spending all this time and money just trying to get people to know about you. So having a good marketing plan, a good marketing budget, like all of those things are so important. I would say, collect as much money as you can, but also make sure that when you're doing your planning, you know the things that you're going to do to bring in revenue and that those will sustain you.
So I'd also like to talk a little bit about franchise models versus completely creating your art or craft studio from scratch, because I know that's a question that you've gotten a lot, right? Thinking about all of these numbers and all of these logistics and business planning, there are, within lots of different industries, franchises. We often think about fast food restaurants like McDonald's having franchises, right? That's a common known franchise. But there are franchise like craft and art studios. And sometimes people might think like, oh, that would be so much easier. What do you recommend when people are sort of toying with that idea?
I definitely have opinions about this. And it is definitely an opinion, and you should Make your own decisions about this. For me, franchising this type of business, I don't like it. I think that if someone is creative and wants to have this kind of business, you don't want to be held back by a franchise. The franchise can help you put systems and things in place, which I think are helpful. Like, you do need those things, and I can help you with that. But I think that the money it costs to have a franchise is better put into setting yourself up for success as a craft studio owner than going into this franchise model, which can tend to be quite a money drain. You don't have as much freedom to pivot or freedom to do more of what you want.
Well, that makes so much sense to me. And I've never explored a franchise model because I think, like you pointed out, I think for most multi-passionate creative people, like artists, makers, crafters, the joy is in the doing it our way and being creative and figuring it out. And if you're just taking somebody's, like, here's the box of what you're supposed to do, there's not as much fun in that. And if you're not having fun in some way running your own business, you're going to burn out.
Right. I just think that for the creative art space or studio space or whatever, a franchise model, I don't know, it just takes a little bit of the soul out of it. A lot of people come to me and want to open Makit Takits in other places, and I'm like, no. Open your own thing and I can help you make it yours. If you need help with coming up with some sort of base plan, whatever, to get your ducks in a row, so to speak, or whatever, like, I can help a lot with systems and finding suppliers and things like that. But I don't need to recreate Makit Takit. Like, Makit Takit is me. I Makit Takit, and you be something else. I have helped some other studio owners, and I call them my sister stores. So we're not affiliated in any way other than I will always have their back, and I will always help them do what they need. I think that you just need to have faith in yourself, and you don't need this extra, I don't want to call it a burden, because for some people franchises are freedom from doing that stuff, but for me personally, for a creative studio, I would say just do it yourself.
I think too, with such a like physical location based business that really is a part of the local community, I think that's another aspect too, right? Like, you're in Nebraska. I'm thinking I'm located in New Orleans, Louisiana. I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and like, region to region, there's such different, vibes, things that people are interested in, but also by creating your own brand within your community, you can partner with that community and create a sort of third home for people, like a sense of place, in a way that if you're taking a franchise, you can't really do that. It's like the locally owned coffee shop versus the Starbucks, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think there is. And there's such a pull for people to support local right now, and to, and I think that's great. Like, I want people to support their local mom and pop shops. And I think with millennials and Gen Z, they're to that point where they're like, yeah, like, we don't need another Walmart. We don't need another Olive Garden. Like, they want to support, the people in their community who are doing great things.
Well, cool. I feel like we've covered so much good information, and this is such a personalized experience, like we kind of talked about, that it's really good to partner with trusted experts and people who have done it before. So if people are interested in exploring this business and want to get mentoring from you and your advice, where can they go to learn more about working with you?
My website, makittogether.com, and it's spelled MAKIT together.com. I have all of my business mentoring on there, and you can also reach me by email. That's the best way. Christy at makittakit.com.